Hi, I'm Joe Saunders with Miniature Landscape Hobbies, and in this episode, I'm going to show you a simple and effective way to improve your terrain builds with hairspray. Do you know how to maximize the visual interest in your forests, fields, and other naturalized areas in your scenery builds? You know, how to get all those little details added to the scene to cause the viewer's eye to linger on the work and to build realism. This is an age-old challenge for miniature builders. But don't worry, you can turn naturalized parts of your diorama or game spread from just okay into art. There are many ways to do this. Skill with a paintbrush is the main one, but one of my secrets is so dead simple that it really is ridiculous how effective it is. And it relies on hairspray. Yes, a commonly available and cheap beauty product, not an expensive or obscure hobby item. Before we get into the specifics, though, we need to understand what this technique is not. In scale modeling, there's a method of weathering commonly referred to as the hairspray technique. It relies on the water solubility of hairspray to create realistic chips through paint layers. The result is similar to the sponge chipping technique, which I often use. But I'm not talking about this here. I'm referring to a technique to enhance the naturalized areas of scenery, not weather human-made structures. I'm going to provide a step-by-step method for you in a moment, but what the technique does is use the adhesive properties of hairspray to create the appearance of deadfall and other organic detritus on naturalized terrain. Why do this, you may ask? Well, it's for two reasons. First, most pre-made solution for trees and other greenery for model building, well, they just kind of suck. Each tree or bush, in the end, just comes out too uniform, and they look wrong. So they could benefit from some variety, which this technique helps out with. Secondly, and most importantly, forests and other wooded areas are not sterile, orderly places. They're full of leaves, twigs, and other items lying about. Now, when you're building in 1/100 or 1/87th scale, this might seem like something you can gloss over. But humans at a subconscious level are looking for visual keys to make the naturalized areas they see in miniature conform to with what they're familiar with in the real world. This in turn helps establish scale, realism, and interest for the viewer. This is the sort of thing that elevates your work and makes people linger on contemplating your art. The good news is using the technique is actually really easy and you can learn it quickly. So let's get going and take a look. Do you need custom diorama quality terrain made for one of your projects? My contact information is in the video description. The materials you need for this technique are maybe a little unusual. You'll need the can of hairspray itself, any brand should work, dried oregano leaves from the spice aisle at the grocery store, and some matte varnish. If you want to control the scale of the deadfall by making it finer, you can also use a coffee grinder, but this is optional. Now, to make this work, you prepare the terrain to the point where you're ready to add the ground cover. Usually I'll prepare the model, including the static grass, but not add the trees. You can add them later. However, I usually find this can be done more or less on a case-by-case basis, and it depends highly on the subject you're using. With this ready, now just go ahead and coat the area with hairspray, and sprinkle the oregano over top of it where you want it. The different shapes of the herb look like any variety of leaves and sticks. If the mix you have is too large, you can cut it finer with the grinder. I've only ever used oregano, but you could probably use other spice mixtures. If you have experiences with other types or ideas about other ones to use, make sure you mention them in the comments. After the oregano is down, it'll only take a couple of minutes for the hairspray to dry. Then I suggest you put another coat down to seal it all in and let this dry thoroughly. At this point, you can go ahead and finish the work on the model and top it off with a couple coats of matte varnish. Why the varnish? Well, hairspray won't last forever or endure the rigors of wargaming or handling if what you're working on is a piece of art. By varnishing over it, though, you make it more or less permanent. And that's it. High quality deadfall to enhance visual detail, and it makes the terrain smell nice. Easy to apply and cheap. Now, because hairspray is such a gentle adhesive, there are two other ways to use it that you might be interested in. The first is as a fixative for dry pigments. I'm not a huge fan of dry modeler's pigments. I find that at the scales I work at, they just don't look right. Unless you are creating a sediment of dirt on pavement. Then they're awesome. To assist, I apply the layer of hairspray, brush the pigments on with a stiff dry bristle brush, and let the adhesive properties of the spray hold the pigments in place. I recommend you put another layer over this, and of course use varnish later. I really like this option, when you consider that regular fixatives for pigments are pretty harsh stuff. The one I have downstairs at the moment is made of naphtha. It works fine, but it's also the same chemical that goes in my camp stove. The second is for adhering foam flock, or other scenic effects to foliage on model trees. Remember I said that most model trees look too uniform? Well, spray the foliage with hairspray, sprinkle on oregano, crushed foam flock, static grass, or whatever you want, and this can help change up the appearance of each tree. Of course, remember to reseal it afterwards with more hairspray, and of course varnish it all when you're done. So there you have it, how to use hairspray to enhance your naturalized terrain. These few steps, though they are cheap and easy to do, can really help build interest and elevate your work. I suggest you try this method out. You can thank me later. Plus, when everything is set, the layer of herbs makes your work smell like a fancy Italian restaurant, which is a benefit in and of itself. Miniature Landscape Hobbies is your source for miniature, terrain building, and diorama content, and we can't do it without your support. We want to build a community to ensure that the wonderful art of building a miniature is accessible to everybody. To participate, please consider joining on Patreon. For $4 a month, our Patreon members benefit from 10% off at Joe Saunders Terrain in the Etsy store, 5% off paints and hobby supplies at Torchlight Games, free access to STL files, a mention in our credits, and early access to our videos. Please check it out and consider joining. That's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed making it. Please remember to subscribe, press the bell button so you get immediate notification on our videos, and until next time, remember to keep building life in miniature.